Before the video starts, I just want to say how beautiful box arts created by artists look like. Nothing will compare to those art pieces that modern games still haven't done right. Rest in peace, you will be missed. Horror media has been around for centuries. Walking down a narrow hallway, building suspense. Dead silence causing more suspense, and then blam! All that anticipation just created a wet spot in your pants. Recently, the surge of the horror genre has rapidly been increasing in the scare factor and storytelling. Early years of video games, horror titles were not being produced until the early 1980s. Haunted House and 3D Monster Maze were some of the first horror games to ever be released. With it coming out on the Commodore 64 and Atari 2600, the gameplay loop was very simple. Get the hell out and survive. By the name Sweet Home for the Famicom was no ordinary horror title. It came packaged with more depth, ideally creating a new outlook on what horror games could be. This includes the beautifully drawn monsters and entities that you encounter throughout the game. Once the 90s started to roll around, games started to look more ambitious. Games wanted to step out of the box and do more of a mature style of horror. Alone in the Dark is a well-known survival horror title that for its time was a hit. It did, however, lend some useful ideas to a small game called Resident Evil. Seventh Guest at the time was one of the first games to be released on a CD-ROM, on top of having live action scenes that trigger after completing a puzzle. It was released in 1993, a year after Alone in the Dark, and has been regarded as one of the best-selling CD-ROM games, beating out another puzzle game called Myst. Gaming has changed with the release of Mortal Kombat and all its gore. It shocked everyone with its gameplay, causing the US Senate to intervene and create the ESRB rating. Most horror games now fall under M-rated, but that didn't slow the industry down at all. Now this is where the fun begins. Resident Evil, a classic piece of horror that garnered a following with the release of the first game. There are two notable scenes in the original Resident Evil, one being the dog jumping through the window causing an abrupt scare for many players, the second being the zombie turning around after consuming a dead person in the house. Alongside the positive reviews, the game became one of the best sellers in the US and the UK. The first game sold around 2.7 million copies. On top of that, Capcom has released a statement saying that the franchise has sold over 100 million units, making it Capcom's best-selling franchise in terms of sales. Let's just say they did make a good amount of movies, but that doesn't mean they were actually that good. The last game of the 90s that made a great impact on the horror genre is called Silent Hill. The reason for the amazing success of the first game came from the idea of caring more about the atmosphere than other games for its time. The abstract meaning in the story made it easy for players to interpret their own ideas based on the ending they got. Despite the sales not topping Resident Evil, it did, however, leave its mark on the industry and players alike on what good horror games could be. With the rise of indie horror games, many notable titles emerged from the internet and gained popularity quickly. Games such as Amnesia, Slenderman, and many others scared players with ease. The fear it left people with was only temporary, but it's exhilarating when it happens. Let's not forget the sound he makes when he captures you. Damn, I hate that sound. I want to add two more games to the spotlight since they had such a huge impact on the gaming community. Five Nights at Freddy's, and one title that many fans of the genre love to talk about, PT. FNAF, as it is referred to by the community, started relatively small. The idea then evolved into something so massive it spawned 4 additional games following the success of the first one. Recently, Chuck E. Cheese has filed for bankruptcy, and it created a FNAF meme with people actually ready for the worst, if it ever came to that. Video games have evolved into something massive. The horror genre itself is no different, with it garnering lots of attention. Some games like
Don't touch that dial now, we're just getting started.
I think it's time that we finally talk about this. Last on the list is widely considered the greatest piece of horror media that's ever been created. I, personally, and others alike, haven't seen anything like this before. It almost came out of nowhere since it was technically being produced under Konami's nose when they weren't paying attention. My initial experience with PT came from stories and theories on what the idea of the game is about. The internet treated it like they just found the tape from the ring, trying to solve a puzzle. Not long after being released and being downloaded more than 1 million times, Konami found out and pulled the plug on the entire project. Fans couldn't get enough of it, and when it got taken off the stores, people became furious and directed their anger towards Konami. This incident occurred in April of 2015 and at the time was one of the biggest outrages in gaming. Slush love for this game upon disappearing is immeasurable, and the internet could prove it with its countless videos on the topic. If this doesn't represent what good horror games could be, then we're heading in the wrong direction.